Did you know that Hamilton's own engineer could have altered his car without his consent just before qualifying in Holland, and that in Abu Dhabi everything ended up exploding? Today I tell you the complete story of the most dangerous drama within Ferrari in recent years. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Lewis Hamilton came to Ferrari with a mission to restore the sporting prestige of the most legendary team in Formula One and close his career with a glorious new chapter. But what seemed to be a dream marriage between winning experience and historic ambition quickly began to unravel. And the most alarming thing, from within, it was not a collision with rivals, it was not a problem adapting to the car. It was a silent, progressive, and corrosive war between the pilot and his own technical team. In the early stages of the season, Hamilton's body language already spoke volumes. Although the cameras showed him smiling in the red pits, his gestures during practice sessions, his looks after qualifying, and above all, his tone on the radio revealed discomfort. Every message between him and his engineer Riccardo Adami sounded distant, sometimes unnecessarily tense. Instead of fluid and tactical communication like he had for years with Peter Bonington at Mercedes, everything here was forced, mechanic, as if two experienced people were forced to work together, but without any real emotional or professional bond. On the radio, Hamilton's answers were short, almost always with a hint of skepticism. In several races, he was heard asking to be allowed to do his thing, a phrase that in another context would sound like self-confidence, but here was perceived more as a cry of frustration. He knew that the instructions he was receiving were wrong, or at least misaligned with what he felt from a cockpit. Since the Australian Grand Prix, a pattern was established. Every time Adami intervened, Hamilton responded with a tone that oscillated between impatience and disinterest. What was most disturbing was not the technical disagreements, but the lack of emotional connection. In Monaco, when Hamilton asked, "Are you mad at me or something?" and received silence in response, the world saw something that rarely happens in a Formula One team, an emotional fracture in real time. It was not a problem of results. It was a trust problem. Hamilton didn't trust Adami. And perhaps most seriously, Adami also did not seem willing to give up his technical leadership to the most successful driver in history. This disconnection grew race by race. The post-race meetings became increasingly acrimonious, and according to internal reports, Adami and Hamilton barely exchanged words outside of the official radio stations. In Maranello, some began to see the conflict as a struggle for power. Who has the last word on the car? The driver who has won 7 championships, or the engineer who has been following the Ferrari methodology for a decade? The most painful thing is that this clash of egos not only affects the internal environment, but also the performance on the track. Hamilton began to make decisions on his own, modifying his driving style to compensate for structural flaws in the car that were not corrected at the factory. Instead of fine-tuning the details with his engineer, as he used to do at Mercedes, he now simply adapted to what he received, knowing that his technical suggestions were being ignored. This attitude, although professional, has an obvious emotional cost, the feeling of being alone within a system that should support you. And so a silent war was built. A war that does not break out in the headlines, but is felt in every poorly executed qualifying lap, in every race where Ferrari's strategy seems to go in the opposite direction to what Hamilton would have chosen. The real problem is not in the points, nor even in the car. It is in the very structure of the team. Ferrari signed a sports legend, but has not known how, or has not wanted to give him the control and trust that that legend needs to shine. What began as a technical friction between driver and engineer ended up becoming a symbol of something deeper. Ferrari is divided, and Lewis Hamilton is caught in the middle of that fracture. In Formula One, the margins are so fine that a couple of millimeters can change everything. And that was exactly what happened between Friday night and Saturday morning of the Dutch Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton arrived at the Zandvoort paddock with confidence. On Friday, I had finally found a positive window of behavior in the SF25, an unpredictable and nervous car, but which in that session seemed to respond. His feelings were good. The team knew it. The pace in the long run, according to Ferrari's own data, was competitive. But the next day, when the car returned to the track, it was completely different. Literally, in an unexpected turn, and according to internal reports not denied until today, Hamilton's car was altered without his consent. The rear ride height was modified. The differential preload too. These changes, although technical, have profound implications for the balance of the car. They change the way the car reacts when braking, how it turns, how it transfers weight in high-speed corners. For a driver like Hamilton, who bases his style on surgical precision at corner entry, it was like going from wielding a scalpel to an axe without prior warning. The most scandalous thing was not the change itself, but how it was executed. It is claimed that Riccardo Adami, their own race engineer, was not only not consulted, but found out about the changes after the car was already on the grid. This points directly to an increasingly influential group within Ferrari, the so-called performance group of Maranello. A team of engineers, strategists, and data scientists that operates more than 1,000 kilometers from the circuit in simulators and virtual environments, making technical decisions that are then imposed on those responsible on the track. Often without debate, no dialogue, without context. The inevitable question is, why change a car that worked? Why risk the confidence of a driver who had been showing signs of progress? The official explanation never came. But dangerous words began to circulate among the rumors in the paddock: sabotage, favoritism, internal rupture. While Charles Leclerc's car remained unchanged, Hamilton received a completely different configuration, and the results soon reflected it. His performance plummeted. His times were erratic. His confidence non-existent. The bomb was activated, but it did not explode in Zandvoort. He did it weeks later, when, after the SF-25 technical disaster in Abu Dhabi, Hamilton broke his silence. In direct statements, he confirmed that during the season he had sent detailed technical documents to the team, explaining critical areas of improvement, proposals for changes, even aerodynamic analyses. But in his own words, those ideas were not only ignored, they were systematically rejected. "I sent complete documents to the team after the first few races. And then during this break, I sent 2 more. Nobody responded to me." This is what Hamilton said, and the phrase resonated like a cannon shot throughout the international press. For a team like Ferrari, whose hierarchical structure is inflexible, those words are a direct accusation. What the driver was denouncing was not only the inefficiency of the car, it was the disconnection between those who compete on the track and those who rule from their desks. Abu Dhabi only confirmed the inevitable. While Leclerc managed to get into the top 8, Hamilton finished 14th. The difference between the two already exceeded 78 points, and the tension was now impossible to hide. The cameras showed a visibly frustrated Hamilton, isolated in the box, with an expression closer to resignation than anger. His final message was devastating. Time will tell if we act on these things or not. In other words, he was no longer expecting a response. And is at that point when the conflict stopped being technical and became existential. Why did Ferrari sign Hamilton? Did they want a pilot or a marketing figure? Because if the intention was to build a winning car with his experience, the only way to achieve it was to listen to him, give him influence, incorporate it into the process. Instead, what he received was silence, opacity, and technical decisions that directly harmed him. On any other computer, this would be an isolated error. But at Ferrari, a team with a history of infighting, leadership changes, and proxy wars, this is part of a pattern. The bomb that exploded in Abu Dhabi is not just about the car. It's about a system that seems unable to adapt to a modern culture of collaborative work. A system that, perhaps without realizing it, is pushing out one of the most valuable drivers in its recent history. Ferrari has a complicated car, but that's not the worst. Because in Formula One, cars can evolve. They can be redesigned. They can be corrected. What cannot be easily fixed is a system that refuses to listen, that protects immovable hierarchies, and that turns innovation into a threat. That is what is happening at Ferrari. And that's why the problem is not SF-25. It's everything that surrounds it. The reaction of the engineers did not take long to become evident. Arturo Merzario, former Scuderia driver, said it without filters. 90% of Ferrari engineers did not want Hamilton to join the team. Because, not out of personal hatred, not because of foreign policy, but because Hamilton's arrival represented a threat to their work model, to your decisions, to your role within the chain of command. He was a pilot who came with his own ideas, with documented proposals, with experience, with influence, and that, in a system where power is centralized, is not well received, is seen as an intrusion. And if you've come this far, I want to propose something else. Would you like us to analyze in depth those Hamilton files in a future video, the technical documents that the driver himself sent to the team, and that, until now, no one in Maranello has wanted to review publicly? Imagine what we could discover if we broke down those proposals one by one, understanding what Ferrari ignored and why it could have been their biggest mistake. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.